Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris and I have the brand new LEGO Fortnite Mecha Team Leader in hand. This is the largest LEGO mech ever made, taking advantage of a brand new joint that just released this year, introduced in the Jurassic World T-Rex skeleton, allowing it to have massive amounts of articulation while still being at a gigantic scale. This is a fascinating build, and you know me, I love LEGO construction, buildable action figures, I love LEGO mechs, and this is truly one of the most ultimate LEGO mech sets ever made. That being said, it is not perfect. I can definitely see a world where maybe in just a few years from now, we'll look back at this set as a set that maybe revolutionized the way that LEGO mechs are made, making them at such a large scale but still having articulation. It is genuinely so cool, I can't wait to dive into it, so let's take a look at my early review at the LEGO Fortnite Mecha Team Leader right now. This is set number 77078, the Mecha Team Leader. It is the largest mech that LEGO has ever made, coming in at a whopping $250 or 230 euros and 2,503 pieces. As a point of comparison, here it is next to another of one of the largest LEGO mechs ever, Cole's Titan mech from Ninjago, which barely only reaches up to the midpoint of its chest. It is absolutely massive, and really the only way they were able to pull this off is by use of a brand new joint LEGO created specifically to make large mechs, introduced in the large-scale buildable T-Rex skeleton which premiered earlier this year. This so-called XXL clutch joint utilizes a number of different pieces, including 2 gears, 2 different clutch joint connector pieces, and a couple of rings and pins to allow for omnidirectional movement, which both the arms and the legs use to great effect. It is really fascinating to see a massive large-scale mech utilize these joints, and ever since they came out, I was wondering just when we would see these appear for a large-scale buildable character. That being said, this to me feels like very much the prototype of what LEGO can do with large-scale joints, and after putting it together, I truly feel that in just a few years, we're going to be looking back at this model and seeing it as the first mech to really blaze the way for larger-scale LEGO mech builds, which undoubtedly will be better than this, because after all, usually when LEGO does a brand new style of build like this, they tend to just get better and better and better over time. And so this to me feels like the first step towards a brand new era for LEGO mechs. There's absolutely a lot to talk about here, and it is genuinely a really cool and impressive model, but there are a couple of things that do hold it back from being as posable as it could be. And I for one cannot wait to see what LEGO does with this concept, because this feels like a very early prototype of what LEGO can eventually do with their mechs. So let's jump in for an early review of the massive Mecha Team Leader right now. First and foremost, kind of getting this in a standard pose, I really do want to showcase the aesthetics of the model starting from the bottom all the way to the top, and then we'll move on to articulation. One of the things I really love about this mech is just how playful and unique each of the detailed features are. The shoes are asymmetrical, so you have a burger-sized shoe and then a tomato-style shoe, and all of them just work really nicely together. They add a splash of goofiness to the character that kind of makes it feel like you're combining different styles and clashing different aesthetics, which is really the intention here. One leg is red in color with slightly movable knee joints, but honestly there's not that much you can do with those knee joints, and then of course the other leg is fully blue, and you can see the knee pads can just ever so slightly bend out, showcasing just a little bit of the internal mechanism. Obviously this mech does not feature knees. There probably was no way yet they could figure out how to make stable knees on a mech this size, so unfortunately while you can articulate the legs back and forth, you really can't do much with them posability wise because obviously there are no knees. The back of the model is suitably really nicely armored up. I really love the addition of those rocket wing elements on the back of the model itself, and we'll take a closer look at those as we pose it up, but I really want to showcase the amount of detail factored into even the back of the legs here, where you can see that despite the fact that it doesn't have knees, rounded elements mimicking the style of joints are built into the model, which really makes it feel very cohesive and just adds a lot to the aesthetics of the build. It is unfortunate the legs are fully straight, and personally I would have loved to see maybe just a slight bend in the legs to really make it sell the effect that this is a mech that can be posed, but obviously they are dealing with some pretty tight constraints here. Over on the back here, you can see that you can angle these booster wings just ever so slightly. There's honestly not that much you can do with them, and actually on one side there's a piece of armor that kind of covers up one of the wing pieces here, so you can't really even bend it that much outwards. It basically is just fixed at one particular angle, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but just something I wanted to point out. Moving over to the main cockpit here, you can see that there is a space for the minifigure to be seated inside the vehicle. There's a very comfy looking, almost gamer style of chair on the inside, and a couple of stickers that reference the singularity and the great devourer that this mech had to fight. It would be really cool to one day see a mashup build to actually serve as an opponent for this mech. You can see what a brick-built devourer would look like on screen for the chest there, and I think that would be really cool to actually have an opponent build, since the devourer is completely different from this. It's kind of more like a monster or creature. I'd love to see something built at this scale to face off against the mech. But honestly, I don't know if LEGO would ever do it, because they tend to really try to focus these big sets on hero-related vehicles, and villain stuff just typically doesn't sell that well. But maybe that could be a hint, you never know. It is cool to see that kind of console display showcasing its opponent there, and of course, you can seat the minifigure just very snugly inside the cockpit. The way it closes up is a little bit interesting. You kind of have to tuck away the front chest plate underneath the rib cage of the model, so you kind of have to angle a couple of different pieces to make it work, but once it's fully enclosed, it works out very well. You can see that's what the minifigure looks like on the inside there, and here you can see you have to push the breastplate up to fully close it in, so now it is 100% locked into place, and I do think it is a really nice way to kind of show that this is a mech being piloted by the minifigure, which we'll take a look at near the end of the review. Moving onwards to the rest of the model, I want to highlight the arms here. One of the arms is fully black and robotic. It really has that very mecha style of vibe. I love how you can move the shoulder pads up and down, and the other arm is super playful and fun. It's a giant lizard head, because obviously this mech has been built out of a ton of different Fortnite characters and skins, and the lore behind it is all these different groups coming together, so I think that totally works. The shoulder armor naturally falls downwards due to gravity, which I think is a really nice touch to make it always look good, and of course it does have this absolutely massive sword. The one thing I will say about the sword is it would have been really cool to have the build be mimicked from both sides, so it would look good from either side, but unfortunately there clearly is only one side this is meant to be viewed on, which is this side right here. The other side is mainly just to add some detail behind it. And finally, as we wrap up the aesthetics of this model, I do have to mention the head, which I think just is built really nicely. You have the combination of relatively new slope elements to really just sell you on the design of the build here, and it just looks absolutely correct for what it should be. It's often pretty hard for LEGO to scale up a large-scale minifigure head into a big brick-built model, but I think they really pulled it off very well here, and it's cool to have the stickers of the hearts on the side too. But now, I want to take some time to really jump into the articulation of the model. So going ahead and removing the sword here, let's start off with the hands and showcase just exactly what you can do with the build. So first off, you can move the arms thanks to the new omnidirectional XXL joints. You can splay them outwards as well as move them up and down, which is super cool. You can see me moving the arms up and down here, and I am barely managing to even just get my hands in here because this is genuinely a really large model. It's even bigger than the Voltron set that they released for LEGO Ideas, which was previously one of the largest LEGO mechs ever, and it is genuinely an absolute feat of engineering they were able to pull this off. Moving the elbows, you can see they are utilizing the standard ratchet joint for the elbows, and unfortunately, depending on where you hold it, there are some pieces that do tend to fall off. It's not the most stable when it comes to moving it around, just for a couple of armor plates here and there, but thankfully nothing breaks too badly that you can't just slide them back on. You can see that you can get the legs in a massive kicking stance where obviously these joints are working overtime to support the entire weight here. Again, if you're not careful, you can tend to pop off some of these shoulder or side armor pieces around the hips there, but as long as you're careful with the model, it is generally okay. You can move the leg outwards and forwards and backwards, but unfortunately there is one thing this does when you move it around, and that is actually damage some of the pieces surrounding the gear joints. I feel like this is something that they're going to fix in future large-scale mechs just to prevent damage from happening, but you can clearly see that for certain joints you actually are nicking up the bricks as you move the legs around, which definitely is not a good thing. Obviously, it's not that big of a deal. Those are common plates, and they're not really going to cause any structural issues over time, but it is something I do want to point out because it is very strange to have a LEGO set literally kind of damage some of the pieces inside of it just by the standard movement of playing around with it. That being said, I cannot even think of any way they could have built it to prevent that. I mean, other than just compromising the aesthetics and adding in some more space in between the joints, I really can't think of a way they would prevent that. So I guess it is kind of a necessary evil when playing with a model like this. The feet themselves can be angled back and forth and swing side to side just ever so slightly, and honestly, the feet themselves just don't give you a lot of articulation motion, and that is one downside of the model. Despite the fact that the legs are articulatable, you really cannot get this in any sort of a walking stance. This is the closest I was able to do, and even then you have one foot kind of above the ground there, so it's only resting on just the tip of the foot. So honestly, it was a little scary to put it in this position, especially because I was very worried about it toppling over, which it did a couple of times while I was playing with it, but thankfully the model is robust enough that it can topple over without actually causing that much damage. Obviously though, I wouldn't recommend it. This to me is the most amount of walking I ever was able to make it do. I was not able to get it in any other sort of walking pose other than this, and I guess this is better than nothing, but it is kind of a shame to have so much effort dedicated to having those really powerful, big, beefy XXL joints support the movement of the legs, only for you to not really be able to make it move in any significant portion because it doesn't have knees and it doesn't really have any sustainable ankles. This is part of what I mean by the fact that I am sure that going forwards into the future, LEGO is going to continue to experiment more and more with making gigantic LEGO mechs, and this feels like just the beginning of what could be an entire system of large-scale mechs that is just waiting for LEGO to try it out with this new design. Personally, I would love to see like a giant $300 or $250 Ninjago mech in like, let's say 2 or 3 years from now, after they have figured out all the kinks in this system and really are able to spec it out. I am sure those designers would absolutely be able to cook on something like that. So this to me very much is just the beginning of what LEGO could do. As you can see, as I'm moving it around, different pieces are kind of falling off, like the side panels do tend to fall off when you squeeze it. Even the joints around the knees, which don't even have joints, but the armor around the knees does tend to fall off just a little bit here and there. So it is just something I do want to point out with the way this is built. It really just feels like it is just an early version of what a massive LEGO mech could eventually be. But with that, I think we've summed up all of the articulation points of this model, so I do want to just take some time to talk about what this model means for LEGO in general. Obviously, if you've been following my channel, you know I am a big fan of LEGO mechs, of buildable LEGO figures, pretty much everything related to building a large-scale action figure out of LEGO. I grew up on Bionicle, I grew up on buildable action figures, so to see LEGO make at least a pretty posable build at this scale is totally a dream come true. I absolutely love the build for what it is. Despite these kinks and shortcomings, and obviously there are a lot of little things about the build I feel aren't perfect, it definitely feels like a good first step towards a bright new future of LEGO finally being able to make large-scale LEGO mechs, which is really exciting to me, and I cannot wait to see for the future what LEGO has in store. Altogether, for $250 and 2,503 pieces, I feel like this is genuinely really good value for what you get. Building this was an absolute treat, and this is one of my favorite building experiences of all time, and it was an absolute blast to put together, and I feel like I genuinely learned things about engineering and about how you actually make a LEGO model just by the act of putting this together, so absolutely have to commend the designers on that. I have a few more thoughts as we wrap up this review here, but before we do that, I do want to take a quick look at the minifigure included in the set, which is a really nice one. You have a printed display stand reading Mecha Team Leader and a nice sticker with a sign showing that like I love the Mecha Team Leader on the sign, which I think is pretty cute. You can kind of use that for your emotes for the figure itself, but obviously the star of the show is this fully decked out Mecha Team Leader minifigure, and I feel like this is pretty much the best version of the figure they could have given us, save for maybe some leg printing on the side to continue the foot printing around, but honestly I don't even think it needed that. The arm printing is absolutely phenomenal. I love the way the pink just kind of goes along very well with the gunmetal gray here. It's a very unorthodox and colorful color scheme, but one that I feel fits the figure super well. Obviously they have made a brand new mold for the head here, which looks absolutely perfect for what they're trying to depict, and the only complaint I have about it is that the pink on the gunmetal gray torso is a little bit too light. LEGO is a little bit on and off when it comes to depicting figures like this. Sometimes they're able to nail it, and other times like this, I do feel like the lighter pink just doesn't quite match the shade that it's supposed to be. And obviously this is an ongoing issue with LEGO figures, but other than that, I am really happy with the design of the figure, and I feel like it is one of my favorite minifigures of the year, just thanks to the incredible amount of detail. Altogether, I love this set. I know it's a pretty controversial opinion, maybe. I know a lot of people just aren't huge fans of this one, especially with the way that it looks. It's super colorful, it's not very posable, but honestly, given all the constraints, and given the fact that this is literally the largest mech LEGO has ever made that actually is fully posable, it's very hard to complain about it. I'm really happy with it. I think it is an absolute triumph of an engineering design, and I can't wait to see what LEGO does in the future. Those are, of course, just my thoughts, so do let me know in the comments, what do you think about this model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Will you be picking it up on August 1st when this releases? And thank you so much for tuning into Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thank you so much, and bye for now.